Holding people accountable, has it gotten harder with the ability for people to move and not take criticism?
To move?
To go to another company. Maybe, you know what, if you want to hold people accountable, maybe everyone doesn't want to be held accountable. Or, you know, your high achieving, your high flyers, that they think that they're right, and you're thinking that they need to do some things.
I think that...
And how do you navigate that as a boss?
Well, part of them holding themselves accountable, once you create that environment where it's an expectation, is they kind of like self-regulate themselves. And I don't think that moving to a different company or somebody who is naturally wanting to do the best that they can do, and they get that support from their boss so they know what the expectations are, they're always going to be that way.
Okay, Doc.
I mean, Here
you go. There you go. That may be a little Pollyannish of you. On a team of 10,
yes.
How many of those out of that 10 are going to be, who are going to qualify as that? That they're going to be high fly, they're going to self-police, and me as the boss, I'm just going to shine, and I really don't have to coach them up.
Oh, probably not 100% unless they have been doing it for a long time. You know,
100.
I said probably not 100%.
Okay, how many out of 10?
I don't know. Let's say if you have got a team where, let's go back, where you have been setting clear expectations for a while.
It's me as a leader.
It's you.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I need to look in the mirror before I start taking my team out.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Because I'm thinking maybe I might have 2.
No.
So if you're saying I have 2, I've clearly been in deficit.
Yes.
As a leader.
Yes.
Okay.
There's some opportunities for improvement.
For me.
For you.
I need to coach myself up. Or go get somebody else to.
Yes.
Okay.
You need to be like, you know, the radio studio here, right? So there's a lot of things going on that you do on a pretty much a daily basis.
Yes. And sometimes balls get
dropped.
Yes.
Yes.
And you coach me up.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. And you know what? I'm like, okay. Well, sometimes I might get a little feelings hurt.
But I'm just trying to make you better.
I know. Thank you.
I'm just trying to make you better. No, but really, it's you're the leader. You know, the buck stops with you, right? If your people are not performing at the level that you want them to, then that's your fault. And it's because either they don't know what the expectations are on what they should be doing. They don't know what maybe deadlines are that need to be established. They just know they have to get a task done, but there's no time frame on it, or it hasn't been mentioned. It could be that, you know, if you're giving more than one person responsibility on a task. So, hey, I'm going to work with you, Mike, on setting up your radio gigs. Well, if I say I'm going to work with you, you might be thinking that I'm doing it. I'm thinking that you're doing it.
It's not a clear line.
Exactly. There's not a clear line of responsibility. And if there's a clear line of responsibility, then that person knows that they're responsible for going out there and getting radio gigs.
Okay.
And also when it comes to, I mean, obviously you have a team. Leaders have multiple employees. Even if you're having one employee and you're a small business owner, you need to be meeting with that person and letting them know, you know, what the objectives are, how their performance is impacted by that goal, being held accountable to whatever objective is being set for them. But I think that if you get people involved, and there's more ownership, and then they are responsible for making sure that those objectives are met. They start holding themselves accountable if this is a continual, constant behavior that you start emulating.
So you see it on a constant basis, and really we need to do something to put better policies in place.
Yeah, processes, or yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't happen, you just don't wing it and all of a sudden everybody is doing what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it.
You cannot wing that into existence.
No, unfortunately not.
Do you think sometimes whether it's winging it or a person putting their head in the sand, the leader thinks we'll just come out of it?
Yes. Or let's say they've got one star, direct report who sees, somebody ask that person for help. They're like, yeah, I'll help you. And they end up doing their work and then part of somebody else's job if they see that things aren't going right. You've got that helper mentality with some people.
Yes.
They always want to help when really they're kind of hindering themselves because they're stretching them. They'll still get the job done, but they're hindering themselves because they're starting to get burned out because they're doing their job and somebody else's job.
And you see that, you should see that as a leader.
Yeah, I see it. Well, yes, you should see it as a leader, and I see it with some of the clients that I coach, that they have that helper personality and always want to be there when they see a need for support.
Okay.
And sometimes, depending on the time frame of when things are due, there might be a time to jump in, and that's fine. But it shouldn't be a consistent. And if somebody's not meeting deadlines, then that's where questioning comes into play. You got to figure out what the problem is.
One of the great parts about being here is I get to ask the expert, and ma'am, you are the expert. Leadership, is it sometimes dependent upon like the age category, or do leaders of say, now I'm not an expert on the Gen Zs and the millennials. All of those either.
Honestly, I am not
But
either.
say you have a group of 20-year-olds. Does leadership look different with them than say 50-year-olds?
Well, I don't really focus on generations with what I do. I just kind of go in and coach on the individual.
So if you have a group, whatever the organization is, they have a bunch of young people. As opposed to you going and another organization has a bunch of older people.
Right. Well, there is going to be a difference. Now, I think that those who are younger, they like to have a mission of what they're working for and why.
So when you're coaching the leadership of that organization, that's what you are touching on with them. That maybe that's some of the things that they need as opposed to the older workforce within a team.
Well, everybody needs to understand the whys behind it, and sometimes we don't do that. We're like, Mike, I need you to be here at 11 o'clock and record this, radio spot, but I'm not telling you why I want it. I want it because,
I pay you.
I pay you.
Right.
And, there's a leadership tips and strategies that I want to share that I really want to help somebody else who is in that leadership role, who may not know how to approach a problem, and hopefully with all the leadership, the radio spots that I've done with the radio show and others, that they really get a sense of, okay, I know I can go find Dr. Heather Williamson and I'm going to probably get my question answered.
So the idea of it is that for you, the audience doesn't really matter because it's leadership policies and practices.
Right. Now, I typically really focus on those leaders who have employees, because if you don't have employees, then you're just kind of managing yourself to make sure you get everything done, right? But when you have employees, that's a whole nother, animal that's coming into play here, that now you've got to lead that employee and lead yourself. You got to make time for both.
Which is hard. Yes. Yeah.
So I think, managing your time is a whole nother animal, because then you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to help this person because I have that helper mentality. But then, I still got to get my job done. And when I'm helping, is this really, you start questioning, why don't they know this information? Or why are they reluctant to take it on by themselves? So I think that when that happens, is you have to look at, is this the best use of my time?
And what you do is you realize that sometimes it's not right immediately, but you realize that down the road, if
Right.
I do this right now and put that process in place, then all of a sudden it turns into the ability to say, I don't have to deal with that anymore because the team understands what it takes for us to be successful.
Right, right. And everybody knows what their role is on that team, what they're responsible for, and if mistakes happen, which they are, none of us are perfect. We're going to maybe miss a deadline or maybe projected more than what we should have, but then we own it. Comes back to, that's one way to build trust. So owning mistakes and letting people know that, hey, I'm not perfect, but we're going to figure out what the problem was so it doesn't happen again.
Okay.
So, but yes, and I think one of the problems with accountability that people have is their reluctance to share what those consequences are if they don't meet that objective, whether it's, it's a deadline or, project report, whatever it is.
Part of that one maybe is the consequences that come from, and maybe that's my management leadership style, that when the mission hasn't been accomplished, the task hasn't been met, all of a sudden I get to be really remembering that you didn't hit it, instead of me not making sure that the guidelines were in place for the team to be successful. Is all of a sudden I didn't delegate the authority of responsibilities. Great.
Right.
I just said, Sue and Jimmy, you guys are working on this together. And together, that's a remedy for a big time problem right there.
Right.
You guys figure it out.
Right. And I think that when it comes to consequences, there's also, if you have to implement consequences, there's the opportunity for conflict.
Definitely.
And people run from conflict because, it's uncomfortable.
Yes, it is. And especially in a workplace. And because all of a sudden, these are people who know you, but they don't know you. And now you're wondering how they're going to, like, sales is a really cool place because it's a scoreboard.
It is.
Everybody knows who's selling.
Yeah.
We know who's selling and who's not selling.
Right.
We don't need to go behind closed doors. There's a sales leaderboard, and there's a person at the top, and there's a person or a team at the bottom.
Right.
What you try and do is, if you're not at the top, you're at the top or the upper numbers. You don't want to be down at the bottom, because now all of a sudden we got the whole.
All eyes are on you.
And
why aren't you performing like team one?
Yes, and the
or
thing was,
person one.
And that's different than other departments it's not as clear cut there. It's not as clear cut in a marketing department. Like, who's the star of a marketing department or an engineering department? Maybe the engineering department is the person who came out with that thing or the market, but it's not as clear as like a sales team. And so we had to learn how to focus our leadership responsibilities different there than at another department, which isn't so clearly defined.
Right. So I was at a meeting yesterday, and I was given a binder, pamphlet of a bunch of information about the program, about the organization, and the lady who I was talking with, who was the first person I spoke with, she was like, "Oh my gosh, we're missing 2 of the flyers in there." Well, okay. And so that is where a mistake was made. I mean, she owned it. She goes, she could have just said nothing, and I may not have ever noticed. But she said, you know what, there's a couple, flyers missing of our programs, and I'll need to get that to you. But then you have to ask whoever put that program together, that brochure or whatever, did you go back and double check when you make sure that you finished, that everything is included in these packets? And
the answer for the most part is they didn't.
Right.
The second part to that one is, if you missed that, what else did you miss?
Yeah.
So one of the things a lot of times people don't want to report or self-report is, because now all of a sudden you question my ability to do the job.
Yep. But the cool thing is that when you've got a team that is holding themselves accountable and holding their teammates accountable, I think it's really important to recognize what successes they have. I'm a big proponent of small wins, and small wins add up to big wins.
People don't celebrate small wins.
I know. And it could be something simple like, hey, I got, 5 phone calls made today. If we were talking about sales, they may not have amounted to a sale, but it could have been, obviously,
right.
You don't know down the road, but hey, at least, I did it, and I can check that off and feel really good about myself, and then have somebody else recognize. People like to be recognized for their good deeds.
Because that is a tough one. In sales, it's the picking, it's the rejection that you're asking for. So you're going to have to, so a lot of times people want the big splashy wins.
Yes.
They do want those because they're intoxicating and bells get rung and all those things, but you don't live off of those big wins.
No.
No, you don't.
No. You have to have multiple big wins.
Yes.
to live off
In a
them.
row.
In a row.
And you got to keep them coming.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, you do.
Because if you're only big game hunting, you're bypassing a lot of things every day.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, those are things that you could add, but you're so focused on the big wins.
So when it comes to, holding your team accountable, first you have to hold yourself accountable. So you got to follow through with what you say that you're going to do, right? Like if I say I'm going to be here, for a meeting at 11 o'clock, then I'm typically always early.
Yes, you are.
That's just me. If you're on time, you're late. That's somebody's philosophy. I remember hearing that, and I kind of agree with that because you don't know what's going to happen. And especially, man, I got stuck in traffic this morning on Route 60 because they're doing road construction, and it was backed up. So I ended up taking a shortcut around just because I'm like, well, I didn't know this was happening. You just never know.
There's always going to be something happening.
I know.
And a good leader tries to cut down on the variables and how they're going to impact their team. You can't let the traffic devastate your whole team all day.
Right. The noise. Yeah.
There's always going to be noise. And what you have to do is you have to temper that and create opportunities for the noise to be adjusted, and we can carry on with the mission.
And it seems that every client that I've probably ever worked with has always had challenges with holding team members accountable. Conflict, I know. Which is why coaching is so important. So, whether you get a mentor at your office, and there was a statistic that I recently read that I thought was pretty amazing, and that is that there is a popularity, especially through 2026, there's a compound annual growth rate of 7.6% in the coaching industry. And this is expected, or by 2026. And so obviously the popularity of coaching has increased, and Harvard Business Review did some research and found that coaching boosts productivity by 44%. And there was another study done by the ICF that claims that coaching clients report a median return on investment by 788%.
People did not always buy the idea of coaching.
No, although sports do.
All the time.
Coach
them up.
I know, whether it's basketball, golf,
even ones where you don't see the coach there. Tennis is a perfect example.
Yeah.
They're just stopping in the middle looking, and not there to tell a coach to stop up there because the player knows what they're doing, but they have a coach. Speakers have coaches. Everyone. Right. But when you look at it from a business standpoint, how do we, who do we go find to help us be better? And when a person starts coaching us, then all of a sudden we get to that point of shortcomings.
Yeah, and the whole purpose really of coaching is to help them get clarity and focus on what it is that they are wanting to achieve to make their life easier as it comes to being able to focus on growing the business, growing your department or the company, making sure that you've got the right people in the right places, that you've got the people that have the knowledge and skill sets to do the job. So it helps with that focus and clarity. And then it also really, when it comes to I know with the clients that I have, we do a lot of talking on problem solving and approaches.
Which is a tough one.
It is.
When we're going down a problem, those are, I think, when they look at what makes coaches, what makes a person a star, or it's when, it's not the easy things they come and do. It's conflict resolution, it's coaching, it's all those things right there that really impede a team from being great.
Right.
And that's what has to happen. And maybe the leader has to go out and find somebody who can help us get to that level and stop me from standing in my own way. Because the leader doesn't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
They're too busy putting out fires from day to day.
Which, when they love not to put out fires day to day.
They would, but are they willing to take the heat that's going to come with, I may be creating some of those fires with some of my actions.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah. And that would be that whole self-awareness piece of leadership, where you kind of know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, or challenges. And then I think that if you have someone to help you, like, as a coach, to help you better understand that, then that will help you become that better leader. And so the coach is really just there as a mentor in a way, but to really help improve that person's their overall effectiveness.
One of the things when you look at it is there's a definitive effect on the bottom line by having a coach.
Yes.
And there was, in the past, I don't know if people really knew or understood or bought into that. The same with the healthy workforce. Before, HMOs, what does that mean? Or diversity. All those things. Yeah. When you put a defining number on it, how it can help the bottom line, all of a sudden it becomes important now.
Which is why it's always important to quantify. If you've got a coach, it's always important to quantify that relationship, especially at the end of that, toward the end of that engagement, so you know the benefits that you received from that coaching engagement. Because it's really an investment in yourself.
So when you finish, a person hires and they bring Dr. Hazard on, at the end of the engagement, there's a sit down.
Yeah.
What does that sound like?
So I really get them. I don't sit down at first. I get them to quantify the relationship. Now, through the 6 months or a year, however long we work together, we actually talk a lot, and I'm jotting down a lot of notes of things that they want to work on or the challenges that they're having. And then they go back and implement based on what we have talked and the strategies that we have come up with. And that can go back and quantify. So whether it's sales, like, increase in sales, what's the return on investment? It could be projects are getting done on time. There's less conflict among the team members. There is better communication because everyone is not asking me what's going on today. It's just, there's ways to quantify and qualify the relationship. And time management is one. Are you more effective with your time? And that's one thing that, I've worked with several coaching clients on, is their time management, because they're burning themselves out because they're all over the place and not scheduling their time for themselves. I always say that, if you don't take control of your calendar, somebody else will.
A lot of time, and his name is chaos.
Yes. Yeah.
I learned the hard way when it comes to, and successful people are like, I live by the calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's for real.
So based on, what we've talked about today about, holding people accountable, and if this is a struggle, then hire a coach. I'm always available.
You are.
I know.
You're the leadership guy.
Exactly. So you can email me at Dr. Heather Williamson at transformationgroupllc.com, and I'll be glad to talk with you. But I think that you really invest in yourself and take the time to be who you want to be as a leader.
Transformation Group, that is you, Dr. Heather. You are out in the community supporting organizations. I saw you out there with our good friend Jill Chikowitz.
Yes.
You were out there
last week.
To End the Stigma. Also sponsoring and helping the Children's Hospital of Richmond with the new Wonder Tower. When you, as a business owner and the philanthropy part that goes, talk about why that's I'm sorry, I'm taking over your thing.
You're fine. why philanthropy is important
Yeah, why is that?
and giving
Because
back.
yes.
Because I think because if we don't give back, I think we're not giving who we are. You know what I mean? It's like we're more than just our job and significant other. I think we're there to help other people, and whether it's me giving leadership tips and strategies on the radio show or getting out in the community, like with Jill Chickwitz, To End the Stigma golf tournament that was last week that I helped with, volunteered with, and Lauren Moore's Children's Hospital, and where I sponsor them. I think it's important to get back.
There you go.
All right.
Dr. Heather.
Thank you. So we thank you very much, Mike, for being on the show today and being my counterpart and talking leadership. So that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for listening to Talking Leadership with Dr. Heather, the Leadership Doc, on ESPN 106.1 FM. And I will see you next week, same time, same place.
Thank you.